basically what happens is when you get low pressure here, the pressure under there stays the same. So it's the difference. This is higher, still the same, but it's higher than here. So now what happens is that higher pressure pushes it up. It has to go push up. Okay, it won't let it not happen. Okay, it's a law of physics. And we always tell the kids you can't fight physics. You can do anything you want, but you can't fight it. Okay? The next thing that's in the curriculum. So in other words, you have to have the concept of low pressure. You have to overcome gravity, so that's when the lift comes in. All right? So the lift has to be greater than the force of gravity. So if it's pulling down at 2 tons, you have to have 2+ tons of opposite power, otherwise gravity wins. The next thing is you've got to have forward speed. Okay, so but there's drag. Everything plane. You ever notice when you're flying on a commercial airline, it's always hissing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the air rubbing against the plane. Okay, when you hear this, that's the air rubbing against the plane because you're going like 800 kilometers an hour, 500 plus miles an hour, and in fact, the surface of the plane actually gets warm.
How does a plane go faster, like when it's in the air than
Okay,
when
well,
it's like on
one of the big
ground,
things
right?
on the ground, of course, is drag. The wheels create an incredible amount of drag. You drove down here, take your foot off the gas, what happens?
It slows down.
It slows right down. Right? That's the same thing. Once you're free of the ground, you don't have that ground slowing you down, so you speed up. But then the next thing we do is if you want to reduce the drag, is we get rid of the wheels.
Right.
So what we do is we tuck them up inside. So now all that hanging out no longer hangs out. So that reduces the drag. Okay, so the thrust of the engine has to exceed the drag, otherwise it won't fly. So, we get the plane to climb, all right? Well, we need to exceed the speed of the air, all right? So that's the thrust. So this happens to be a jet engine, all right? And all a jet engine does is it's quick. Suck, squeeze, bang, and blow. That's it. So what it does is it takes air in the front, squeezes it together, okay, and the reason to squeeze it together, that's called compression, okay, is now the oxygen is now more concentrated, okay. In order for any combustion to occur, you have to have oxygen, right? If there's no oxygen, the only reason that you put water on a fire is you block off the oxygen supply. Water doesn't put out a fire, it's the lack of oxygen that puts out the fire, okay. So now you have now what you do is you inject fuel into that compressed air mixture, okay, and you ignite it. Now, with all the excess oxygen, pure oxygen will go boom, like that. Try it. Okay? It supports combustion because only 20% of the air is oxygen. The rest is nitrogen, mostly nitrogen. Most people don't. If you say what's the most abundant gas in the Earth's atmosphere, most people wouldn't think of it because it's nitrogen. It's a harmless, odorless, tasteless gas. And if it wasn't there, you'd be dead. Compressed air, injected some fuel into it, and now you ignite it. With the excess oxygen, it now literally explodes. Okay, so you have to contain that explosion because you kind of don't want to come into the sides of the plane. So what happens is it squirts out the back. Squirts out the back, and so it behaves much like a balloon when you blow it up and you let it go. Same concept. Okay, the inward pressures push the plane forward and the waste gas goes out the back. And so now you have to start talking about Newton's laws. Okay, and you have to consider Newton's third law. Newton's third law of motion is that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And that's all it is. Action, reaction. Okay? Okay, so now how do we get it to lift? How do we get it to go up? Basically what we have in the back here is what's called an elevator. So that's self-explanatory in that it changes. So changing the angle of this depends. For example, if it's tilted up, it deflects air down. So if it deflects air down, third law says something has to go up. So the tail goes up. Okay? So you have a control stick in the plane, and next thing is like, okay, that's fine and dandy, so you get up and come down, but you want to come back, you want to turn around. Okay, so now what we have is called the rudder. Okay, and the rudder is just the same thing as on a ship, except it's going upward when the ship is pointed down, right in the water. Same idea. Okay, it's the same thing as in the ship. Okay, so if you turn you can see the rudders turn slightly this way, and the rudders run by your feet. Okay, there's no gas or brake pedal at play. The two pedals that are in there, which would correspond to a brake pedal, maybe a clutch, stick shift, and so this really controls the rudder. So you see this rudder is turned slightly this way. So what happens is air hits this side of the rudder more than it hits the other side, right? So what it does is it pushes the rudder, pushes the whole plane that way. Get the concept? It pushes it that way.
And that allows it to change its direction.
Yeah, so that will make it turn like this, okay, which is, that's not completely it, but that's called yaw. Okay, and that's a ship turn. In order to get the plane to turn, you've got to get more lift on this wing than on this wing, so that wing goes faster than this wing. Okay, so far?
Yeah.
I got to get let's just say for this, I want to make a right turn. Okay, I've got to get the lift on that wing greater than the lift on this wing to speed it up. So to speed it up, it lifts more. This wing has less, because it's on the inside of the circle, so to speak, has less lift on it. So the plane tips over like that. Now your rudder skids it around, and so whenever you see a plane turning, it's always like this. And you don't want the skid thing. For example, you know the most when you go around a turn on a road, banked.
Yeah.
So basically, what happens is to do a turn, there has to be a lot of control. Right? And so that's what we focus on, is controlling of the aircraft. So let's say I want to land, and the airport's over there. So what I have to do is descend. So obviously my elevator is involved. I have to turn, so I have to use my rudder to get it. Okay, and then I have to use this gadget, aileron, which really in French means little wing. Okay, if you go and get chicken wings, it'll say A de poulet. Okay, it just means a little wing. So basically what happens, these go up and down, controlled by the stick in the aircraft. And basically what happens is, now see this is slightly down?
Yep.
Okay, so what's happening is, the air is slipping over here fairly evenly, but it's kind of hitting the bottom of this a little bit. So the pressure pushes this back. So in other words, when the aileron is down, it pushes it up. By the way, this is how we can slow it down. So what we do, these are folded up. And right, kind of like so, a little better than that. And so what happens is you're going along in the air. Well, when you go along and you want to slow down, you put the brakes on, right? Okay, because your wheels are touching the ground. Well, if you put the brakes on in a plane, nothing happens, right? Because you're not attached to it anymore. So what you do is you put this down. And what this does is it creates drag. It gets in the way. Okay, so it slows the plane down. When a gas or a liquid travels against a surface, it tends to stick to that surface. Okay? So that's what, when the water comes out of the teapot, it wants to stick to the teapot, or the pot that you're pouring, it wants to stick to the metal. That's why you get that rats feeling. So the same thing happens here. As the air comes over, instead of coming up and going straight out like so, it sticks to the surface of the wing. Okay? And what happens is, if this is down, it still sticks to the aileron, but when it leaves the wing, it's now going down. Newton's third law comes into effect for every action. There's an equal and opposite reaction. So if the air is being forced down, something has to go up. Mechanical, like physics. So what happens is that contributes to lift as well. So not only do we have the higher pressure under the wing compared to the lower pressure here pushing the plane up, you have this downward action, and that downward action is always built into the plane. Because remember I said the wing is slightly angled? So you've always got that down angle. That's called angle of attack. The angle of attack is critical. If it was perfectly flat, you have a heck of a time flying. We're really, really tough. So in other words, flight is not as simple as you think. The concept of lift, in its simplest terms, is the plane is here and I want it to be there. How do I achieve that? Well, you have angled attack, you have the cohesiveness, the Coanda effect of the air sticking to the wing and being downward thrust, and you have the change in pressure. Are three different things that contribute to the plane doing that. So that's engine technology. They've changed wing shapes. So the fundamental body of an aircraft is still a tube, right?
Yep.
Okay. So one of the issues is gravity, right? So one of the ways you can combat gravity is reduce the weight. Correct? So therefore you need less lift to get the less weight up. All right, so one of the things that they do is the control surfaces are covered in fabric rather than metal. One, the metal back then was expensive, still is, compared to fabric. The fabric you just sew on by hand. You can see the stitches here.
So they're like this wasn't made out of like 100% iron or the
No,
like, material
I
or steel
suspect there's no iron whatsoever in it, except
Wow.
maybe the engines. That's all. It's mostly aluminum, okay, simply because of its weight. Now today, for example, to get rid of weight on a major, like you go on and it's like a 777 or Dreamliner and stuff like that, what they've done is they've even replaced a lot of the metal components with carbon fiber, plastic. Okay. First of all, the plastic is just as tough as the metal it's replacing, and it weighs a fraction. And in a plane, it's always subject to compression, tension, torsion, and shear. All surfaces. The big issues with planes is weight. You want to get it as light and weight as possible. So one of the ways they did it is by making the control surfaces they're metal inside, but they coat it with fabric. They cover it with fabric, which is sewn on. Okay? It's also fairly easy to repair because if something made a hole in it, here, come on, look closely here. Somewhere along the line, there was a little rip in here. I have no idea what it was, but you see they put a patch there?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's sort of like it uses a glue. The glue smells very much like that. Well, these are called rivets. And basically what happens is the technology of joining metal has quite an interesting history. Aluminum doesn't weld that well. Okay? And from a metallurgical point of view, when you heat two metals to join them together, it's okay for a whole surrounding, but it's vibrating. So vibration can cause something to come undone. So you don't want to do it. So it has to be put together permanently. So they use what's called a rivet. And the rivet's very much like a screw, except it has no threads. And what you do is you need two people. You put the rivet in here, and somebody is underneath with a piece of steel, and you take a gun, and it goes bang, 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 and it squashes the bottom. So now you have a mushroom on the top, and a mushroom on the bottom. Can't come undone. Can't come undone. The only way that can come out is you have to actually take a drill and drill it out. It cannot come undone. You can rip it out. Well, that's not exactly the desired thing. So you can see them all over the place here. And where the more rivets there are, this is obviously a structural beam of some kind in here that provides more support, so you double rivet it. You want to make sure that this doesn't succumb to tension and torsion. So look at how closely it's riveted together. Here's not so crucial. Any luck? One of the things that happens is a Canadian invented a neat system. You suddenly realize when you're going down the runway, you need a lot of power to get off the ground. You don't need so much speed. You just need enough speed to get yourself off the ground. So you need enough, but you need a lot of power. And once you get up there, now you don't need as much power, but you need speed. So basically in a car, how you get around that is you have transmission and a gear shift. Right? This little shit's here, low, medium, etc., etc. Okay, well, you could do that on a plane and change the propeller, okay? But the weight, I mean, your transmission probably weighs 300, 400, 500 pounds on the car. It's huge. I mean, it's almost as big as your engine, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so enormous weight. So basically what a guy, his name was Paul Turnbull, he invented a system whereby the blade here could actually turn in its socket as it's spinning. So not only does it spin, but it can turn. So it can either increase the grab or decrease the grab. And it's kind of like a screw, eh? Like a wood screw has wide thread and a little tiny screw, machine screw, has thin thread. Okay? So by changing the angle or pitch of the propeller blade, you could change, it would act like a transmission so that you could go, well, lots of power on takeoff, then after a while, then you just increase the pitch, increase the bite, because it was so slow the propeller down, but it grabs more. So, which would mean this wing will go a little slower, right? There's not much thrust. Okay? This wing, because it's 2 inches, will probably go a little faster. So if you think it out, what's going to happen is the plane is going to start doing this, right? This is pulling less than this, simply because one engine's crapped out. Okay? Well, now if you made a tight circle, this wing is going tighter, so it's going slower, and the other wing is going faster, right? If you did 2 circles, right? So that means there's more lift on that wing than this one. So not only do you start to turn because of the unequal thrust, but also this wing starts to drop because it's providing less thrust. Okay? But if you continue to do that, if you don't do anything, the plane will just continue and spiral into the ground. So basically what you can do there is slow these 2 engines down and speed this one up to balance it. Makes sense? Okay. You could use rudder control, so the plane wants to turn this way, so you use the opposite rudder to try to make it go this way. Because what you want to do is keep the speed of that wing up, right? You want to keep the speed up. If you want to keep the speed up, you got to keep it flying the same speed.
Yeah, I don't get that.
It's got to be flying the same, because as soon as you start doing this wing has less lift. If you start going around this wing doesn't go as far, so it drops. So you have to compensate for it. Now, another thing we could have too is if the propeller is in the way, like this, and it stops, that's going to produce what? A lot of the D word.
Drag.
So basically what you can do is you can turn this propeller straight edge on like this. So yeah, it still produces a bit of drag, but way less. And that's called feathering. Okay, so you can feather the prop, thereby reducing the drag, because if these guys, see, they're 3-bladed, look at the size of those things. I mean, they're about, what, 6 feet long? Something like that. Okay, each one of those provides a huge amount of drag. So not only is it's not working, but it's providing drag, which is increasing the problem. So by feathering it, by putting it straight forward, you reduce a lot of drag. Now you compensate by either reducing the power on those engines, increasing the power on that, changing your rudder control, okay, to compensate. So if this is slowing down, you try to turn the plane to compensate to speed that wing up. Okay, because if I can get this wing to come around this way using the rudder, then I can keep it up. And you can actually fly on one engine.
Yeah.
Not well.
Or even on a plane of this size?
Yep. I've actually seen it happen. It's not a good idea, and you really are, making that other engine work. But it's very typical. An engine will conk out. Now you wouldn't want to, the only time they will conk out when you're flying, because you would never fly it if it didn't start in the first place. You would ground it, or anything along this line. You wouldn't fly it if there was something wrong. are the beginning trainers. So they call them a primary trainer. Kind of like the tricycle of bicycles. All right. Then we have the advanced trainers. Usually what would happen was on a primary trainer, they had very simple controls, and the whole idea was to teach you just how to fly the plane. No guns, there was no super duper radio radar, and it was a very, very simple kind of thing, just how to teach you how to fly the plane and how to respond when something isn't working right. So how to land, take off, turn, etc. And probably within 25 or 30 hours, you could pick it up and learn to fly. Okay, you could fly the plane on your own. Then what would happen is we would go to a more advanced aircraft. So a primary trainer would be called a PT something or other, usually a number. Okay, this one here, the one with the number 5. Okay, is called an AT. Okay, which is advanced trainer. Now, what's the difference in the advanced trainer? One, the landing gear retracts. So there's another issue you have to deal with in terms of when you lower the landing gear, when you raise it. Also, another thing that